Hi there, Jackie Ward here from the Early Years Learning Hub. Welcome to another podcast series titled Professional Learning Tapas, where I share with you what I hope are some golden gems that inspire you to make some changes to your practice that work for you and most importantly, help the children that you work with to thrive. Today's topic is really more of a guided critical reflection on graduations and end of year celebrations because there is really no better time to do this than now, with all the good and the bad and the ideas for how it could be different in the forefront of your mind. I know it's a busy time organising celebrations and, wrapping up transition to school statements and all sorts of little things, but I do think it's worthwhile just jotting a few points down somewhere on a bit of paper that you could maybe flesh out in the new year when you've got some more time. But this really sort of, I guess, emerged from my own practice and my own thinking about planning for celebrations, over the last few months, lamenting on the ideas in my head. So I thought I'd share them with you. Firstly, I want to say that I'm not a fan of graduations for children as they finish in their early childhood service. I say this not to offend those who hold them dear or say that they are wrong in any way. I think it's all about your own professional judgment and your own decision making there. But more I think of it in the light, I wanted to share my thoughts with you on it in the light of the fact that I think every pedagogical decision that we make is in fact a political act. It's advocating or an opportunity or a missed opportunity to advocate for what we value and what we think is important in early childhood. And for me, one of those things that I think is really important is considering children attending their early childhood service as part of their educational journey or as part of being consistent with the educational continuum. So I think of graduations from that point of view, that children don't graduate from other stages and transition points, for example, primary to secondary and secondary on to further study or work. And so I align my thinking with that, what happens in those other stages of education. I think that also sends a message to the broader community about the importance of the early childhood education as part of that continuum, and that idea around the whole, you graduations are really something that really formally happens in that education continuum as people graduate from university. So that's kind of my thinking. I also think there's a bit of an element of it being a little bit gimmicky and, all of those sorts of things and the cap and gown and whatnot. Again, I've got no problem with you if you or anyone who likes them and thinks that they're a great idea. I guess I'm just interested to spark some thinking and some conversation around this. So as I mentioned before, the end of year celebrations really, we don't do graduation at my preschool. So that wasn't kind of a thing that I needed to have a conversation or a thought about. But I was thinking about opportunities, as I said, of being, thinking about these rare opportunities that we get to engage with families in our broader community as an opportunity to really highlight learning. Being a parent of 4 children and attending lots of sessions at my children's school, like Education Week, say, for example, and there was lots of dance performances and solo bands and, instrumentals play. I would always say to myself, I'd love to visit in classrooms and have the teacher share opportunities, like use that as an opportunity to share some of the learning that children have been working on. Above and beyond and in a more accessible way, I guess, than reports, So that was in the back of my head, thinking about this as an opportunity really to convey, messages about children's learning. And so that's kind of what I was thinking, one of the things. I was also thinking, as I've been working on, one of my sort of professional goals, I guess, has been to allow and afford children more agency in things and decisions that affect them in line with the National Quality Standards and the Code of Ethics and, the Early Years Learning Framework and My Time, Our Place, that how could I involve children in the process where they got a say in what we were doing and what we were going to present to their families as an end-of-year celebration. So here's some examples of what my thinking was and how that sort of informed some decisions, including some evaluations. So first of all, I thought, as I said, how can we use this as a opportunity to share children's learning and show the richness of learning over the years. Some of these things and I thought we might put it together in a PowerPoint that either we present to families as a group or that it's just running in the background. I'm not sure on that one yet. It's something I want to involve the children. I want them to decide which pieces of information that we share with families and what pictures would be good to demonstrate that learning. But, we have shared a lot of those on we use an app called Seesaw. We've shared a lot of those along the way. But I think, sometimes when you see it as a culmination or a story, you really see how children have grown and, all the depth and breadth of things that they've learned over the year that they've been attending at the preschool. So I conducted a little bit of I would call this an inquiry or project-based learning on what it is that they wanted to do. So what learning they wanted to share, what songs they wanted to sing, and whether or not they wanted to do a performance. We have been implementing some drama throughout the year, and so we'd sort of started on this notion of doing a play based on a familiar song, which was Baa Baa Black Sheep, and I had intentions to do some sets and all sorts of different things, but that didn't end up happening. And so I thought it was an opportunity for us to revisit that notion. The children really enjoyed that, and a great opportunity to present that to families. So what we did, I gathered up a mind map of all of those things. We wrote down some songs that children were interested in. The other thing I wanted to do too was introduce more democracy, I guess, into my practice, where children voted on things and there was a shared decision making. So we did that. We voted on which songs and we chose the ones that had the most number of votes. So children could vote on all of the songs that were suggested. So they proposed a lot. 3 of them were Christmas. 2 of them were some of the songs that we'd been singing. And then we talked about the idea of putting on a play and whether or not they supported that idea. And then after that, we ended up doing some work on scoping what the characters were and what sort of sets we might need and what sort of script we might develop. So that's kind of, I guess, a sideline project to this one. So one of the things that I noticed, so I'll give you some of my evaluations/critical reflections on that approach, is that this sort of approach takes a lot more time. So next year I'll definitely start thinking about it and talking about it with the children maybe at the start of term 4 to really get some momentum going and some richness in exploring ideas and planning and all those sorts of things. The other thing is that I noticed when I was having the conversations where I was, getting the children to vote on different songs and whatnot and different ideas is that I was still very much prioritizing the ideas that suited me as opposed to that being a really democratic process. So some critical reflection on that is I really need to consider all of the ideas if that was my intention to introduce democracy. And I think this is an ongoing area or goal for improvement for me, practicing that. And even though you could probably tell from my wrinkles that I'm a very experienced teacher, I think, that's part of our journey. I'm committed to ongoing learning and always looking for ways to improve. So that's kind of a little bit in a nutshell, the idea that, some of the things, just great ideas. And, for example, the play, it's going to be great. And the children, we're doing Where the Wild Things Are. We're enacting that out. The children are loving it and they're coming up with some really great ideas. It's developing really great literacy, understanding and great collaborative learning, all sorts of great things. However, again, it's only, the concert or the end of year event is only next Thursday and we don't have enough time to finish all those things. So we'll put something together, but it won't be as fully developed as it could be if it had have had more time, which is the story of my life. I often need more time to do some of the things. But again, that's just an example of some of the things that I think about in relation to critical reflection on your practice and drawing on your professional knowledge and standards to make decisions around what you do, but also being able to articulate why you do those things and how those decisions inform your program, which again is 1.3 of Quality Area 1. Critical reflection informs the program. So if you'd like to know a little bit more, if my example of critical reflection has inspired you, or hopefully just even these ideas have inspired you to think about it actually doing some critical reflection on whatever you've been doing and how your planning has evolved this year. But if you'd like to learn more about critical reflection in general, we have a great course, which will be in the show notes. We also have published last year a really great blog on meaningful celebrations, which I think could be a really interesting article to read as a team as you think about generally how you celebrate different events throughout the year. We also have, which I'm going to pop a link into, we have our service communication, reflection, and planning tool. It's like a diary or a journal. Not tool, sorry, it's a journal where we have a section in there about planning meaningful celebrations and cultural events and all sorts of things, which you might find interesting. So I'll pop the link to that in the show notes as well. And yeah, enjoy. Hopefully your end of year will not be too stressful and you're ready for a bit of downtime, hopefully getting some over the Christmas period, even if it's just for your public holidays. So enjoy, and I'll see you next time around.